of the host and guests are their own and do not necessarily reflect the position of the management and staff of Guardian Network.
Good evening to one and all. I hope you can hear me. We are live. Yes, I can hear myself now. Perfect. But I hope everyone's having... Please hydrate yourself, please. This is not the sun of the 90s. I'm sorry. I remember the sun in the 90s being like yellow with a glow. It used to be hot, but this is like a different thing. And I really had to apologize to my kids for, being around in a time when we have this particular sun, because this is not the sun of my childhood. I'm so sorry. I know nothing about this. But if you just tuned in, you are listening to Beyond the Rock. I am your host, Dazzy, and tonight I have an amazing show lined up. I've got a guest in studio, so I need all of my texters to be on the best behavior, although you guys always are, and I appreciate that. But if you want to chime in, you want to ask any questions, you want to be a part of tonight's conversation, 242-422-4796, 242-422-4796. And I'd love for you to text in and let me know where you're listening in from. I do love a roll call because sometimes, we don't get the most accurate statistics and demographics, who's listening from where. So I always love to see, and I'm always surprised also by where people are listening in from. Because, it's Bahamians everywhere, right? Not that we just have Bahamian listeners, but Bahamians abroad are really supporting the show. And I appreciate you so much. And thank you all for tuning in. I really appreciate it, for sending in your stories, sending in your text. And some of you, even though you declined to come onto the show, you don't want to talk, right? That's okay. That's fine. That's not a problem. I will still read your story because, hey, if you're a Bahamian abroad and you've decided that you do not want to interact with the Bahamian public anymore, I support your decision, right? I support it. I may not understand it, but I fully support it. And we, the public, still wish you, and you're still representing the country in a way that hopefully is making us proud. So yeah, let me give those numbers once again. 242-422-4796. That's 242-422-4796. So yeah, let me know where you're listening in from. I would love to know. Let me know where you're listening in from. One of the things that's funny about us as Bahamians abroad, right? We still kind of keep a lot of our cultural, we got a couple cultural quirks. So I love when I'm lurking in a lot of these international groups and I see Bahamians, talking about ordering grits from Amazon. I love to see that, right? Because it's like, are you going through these lengths really to get grits? Like, are you truly going through the trouble? Is that what you're doing? Right? And I love it because it's relatable. You got to have your grits. So I often see, they're sharing like, okay, you can go and get conch from this particular place, or if someone is coming over, please bring this. And so I love to see our community just spreading all over the globe and so many places. We don't have a huge population, but I love that if we can have like a little Bahamas in different countries. Like I know we've got it in, I think it's Coconut Grove now, in Miami, not Coconut Grove. What is the name of the area? Someone text me, let me know. But I know that's now been renamed as Little Bahamas. So I'd love to see more of those pop up, in the north and different countries around the world. So, we could keep our culture and heritage kind of together, even if we're not, back at home. We got some diversity. And I see your text coming in, and I promise to read all of them unless, I wanted to, we got someone listening from Carmichael Road. I would love to let me read this text from Carmichael Road. LOL, I would love to have heard that apology to the kids about the sun, like you had a choice when you exist. LOL. Listen to me, texter. I have to apologize. I'm sorry. It is not the same sun. I might not have had a choice, but good luck or whatever you would call it. And I just had to apologize to them because I have no experience with this. But I definitely have a guest in studio. I see your text pouring in. Thank you so much. Let me know where you're listening in from. 242-422-4796. And my guest in studio actually has lived abroad quite a few times. She's a veteran at this point, which means she's such a veteran at this point. If she decided in the future ever at any point in time to move abroad, she could probably get that arranged in a week. That's how sure I am of her organizational skills. So in the studio tonight, a good friend of mine, and also tonight's guest, Keandra. Introduce yourself. Say hi to the listening public.
Good evening, Bahamas. Yes, my name is Keandra Gardner, and I'm the Chief Operating Officer. Yeah, someone who is definitely not afraid of starting over, doing something different, finding different tribes from wherever it is that I choose to put some roots. So yeah, living beyond the rock is my thing to do.
Absolutely. And we are going to get deeper into this conversation, but I will say to those that are listening, you ever have felt like an adult, but there are adults who are adultier than you are in certain ways? Kendra is definitely that friend, right? And so, like I said, I feel like she could organize a move in 1 week. Complete with visas and approvals and everything, apartment picked, car, everything done. So we're going to get
I'm a planner by profession. This is what I do.
Oh, so that's not just a natural personality trait, you sure?
Part of it is a natural personality trait.
It is. It has to be.
It's been enhanced by my day-to-day life.
Okay.
Yeah.
So that is literally what you get paid to do. So
it's what I get
paid
to do.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Excellent. Good stuff. So I see your text coming in. Let me read a couple more of them before we 242-422-4796. So we got someone listening from Mullet Marathon. Thank you so much. We have another listener from Goodman's Bay. Thank you so much for that. We have another listener from Adelaide. We've got South Ocean listening in. Thank you, South Ocean. We've never gotten that one before. Thank you so much.
Over the rock.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Absolutely. And I'm waiting on our U.S. and international crew to check in. They usually come in a couple minutes late. So let's dive right in. Okay. Let's dive right in. So we have a lot of listeners sometimes that, and this show, again, let me reiterate, I feel like I have to do this disclaimer every single week. Mm-hmm. This show is not to encourage anyone to move abroad. Mm-hmm. This show is not saying that you need to leave the rock, you need to leave the Bahamas, you need to leave and go anywhere else. This is about what this show is about is showcasing what Bahamians are doing beyond the rock, and also what led them to their departure, whether it's opportunity, whether it was, the desire to live in, a more developed country with more, opportunities and networking, or, some sort of, business thing that came up,
opportunities,
whatever it was, or just being fed up with a certain power company and deciding that they couldn't, because someone sent me a text and they was like, that was their sole purpose of moving. Because
that was the straw that broke.
That was the straw. And I need to read that one. I'm going to probably read that next week. Mm-hmm. But the story goes, so he said he's living here. Mm-hmm. He purchased a generator. There was a surge. The switch got fried.
That happens often.
He replaced it. It got fried again.
Yep. That happened to us.
He replaced it. It got fried again. In a 2-year span. So he said, the last time I got fried, he just decided, I'm not doing this anymore. He said he got on the internet. He started, bringing up all his old college buddies, looking at what opportunities were there. And by the end of the year, he was gone.
Yep.
So, the lack of the...
And it also sounds like he lived at a location that probably had a transformer.
Yes.
Because that's the story of my life.
Yes. Mm-hmm. So, we have so many stories.
Yeah.
A lot of persons would have returned back to the Bahamas as well for various things, for family, for ailing parents, for the change of scenery. So I'm getting so many stories, and I hear so much on a daily basis. Persons who have come back and regretted it and who are leaving again. Ones who, have come back and are happy that they're back and they're here to stay. And ones who are thinking about leaving now, that have never done it before. So that's why I like spectrum. Yes, that's why I like to have conversations like this. So you've lived in the U.S., Canada, right?
I have, yeah.
Anywhere else that I don't know about?
No.
Okay.
No.
Because you never know what you're going to uncover on these shows, right?
Sometimes, yeah.
It's like, I did have a third place.
I thought about that one.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit. Let's talk first about the U.S. Because that is, obviously the U.S. and Canada are very popular destinations for our people.
Yeah.
So what prompted that move? Kind of just take us from the beginning of what that was like.
My initial move to the U.S. actually started by my attendance at the University of Tampa.
Okay.
And got my Bachelor's of Science degree in accounting at the University of Tampa, and then transitioned from an OPT perspective, which is a training
and with
visa.
OPT, right?
So it extends your student visa for an additional year,
correct,
so that you can get on-the-job training in any particular field. In the past, I'm not sure about what it is now, but in the past, it was something that was, once you applied for it, it was pretty much automatic.
Yeah, still the same.
Okay, so I did that, started working for, at the time, it was called Pender, Newkirk and Company, an accounting firm. At the time, it was the fourth largest accounting firm in Tampa Bay at the time, and they opted to support me in getting a work visa. And
would that have been the H-1B?
Yes.
Okay.
It would have been the H-1B.
Very fortunate and blessed to get that, because that is a lottery visa.
It is.
Yes.
And sometimes it works in your favor. Sometimes it does not. So I spent time working at the accounting firm and ended up staying in Tampa for an additional 4 years.
Okay.
5 years post my undergraduate studies. So that's how I got living in the U.S. for a while.
And so what was that like, that period of time?
To be honest with you, that experience for me was one of the best experiences in my life.
No, Kendra, that's a very strong statement.
It is. Let me tell you why.
Why? Yes. Please quantify.
Because I've always been an independent person.
Okay.
But with my ties to my family, I also felt that I couldn't fully be myself in its entirety. Okay. And when I got into college and I found my village and then I found my work family, I began to really come into my own as an adult. So as an adult, I guess this is where the adulting version of me came in.
Probably.
I was able to just grow as a person. So that's why it became the best time in my life. And Tampa at the time wasn't what it is now.
I was about to ask, what was it like then?
It was pre-boom.
Okay.
In Tampa.
Right.
So from housing, it was affordable.
Yes.
You were able to live somewhat of a more luxurious life.
Right.
As someone who was coming into the workforce, I was able to purchase my first townhome at 21. Because it was like the place to be.
Yes.
And so growing into that space, Tampa gave me the ability to become a lot of who people meet and see today as Keandra.
Right.
Because I became a woman, really. But so that's why it was the best part of my life. I went out, I had good time, it was safe. Things were affordable. I didn't have any heavy reliance on my family in getting started, but I was able to, like I said, develop professionally, build some skills that otherwise I don't think I would have been able to. And Tampa was still, like, it was bustling, but it was not so different, like if you were New York. At that particular period of time. So it had small town, but still big city at the same time.
Right.
And if you see Tampa and experience Tampa today, it has grown 3, 4, 5 times what it was back in, this would have been 2003 to about 2011, 2012. Yeah.
Right. So that experience, because a lot of living abroad, and I did a short stint in high school abroad. And what I tell people is, no matter where you go, there you are, right? But traveling and and living somewhere else other than your hometown, does different things to your psyche in terms of you being. It makes you more confident in your ability to survive, to figure things out, to adjust.
Listen, Tampa was where I learned how to change my own tire as a woman. Tampa is where I learned to understand a vehicle. Event that I decided to take a road trip. I knew what to listen for. I knew what certain things were with the car. So I knew how to get my service.
Yeah, because you couldn't call your brother, your dad, and have an uncle or an uncle.
Right, like... Get you and insurance, you and the road. Right, literally. Figure it out. So it does mature you in different ways when you travel and move abroad and you start over.
So that transition, obviously you came right out of college and you transitioned onto a job, you got your work visa, etc. Navigating the workplace and how you were received. Because this question I get every show, there's some people that are very against this topic. They get very upset. They're like, stop telling people, to move to the U.S., this is racism and this and that and capitalism. And I'm like, hey, shh, just calm down. Yeah. I'm not telling anyone to do anything. Yeah. People are over there and some of them are less stressed than you calling right now very upset. Yeah. Let's be very clear about this, right? So not everyone's having the same experience, and this is across colors and genders and genres, right? Yeah. So how were you received, and what was that like being a young black woman, right, in the south of that country, which is, you're not in the south, obviously, of the state. No. But you're in the south. Still the south. Right. At that time. You got a couple of flags, I remember what it was like back then. Several. I remember. Yeah. So let's be real. But what was your daily experience like? At any point, did you feel unsafe or threatened or like you were about to be trafficked? In all of this. My daily experience was a very safe environment. I didn't feel threatened. I didn't feel that I was being stalked or anything like that because I always made sure from a living perspective that I lived in communities that had gates. Right, we're safe. It was a thing for me because I was by myself and I also wanted my family to feel safe in that space for me. Right. In terms of the work environment, the craziest thing happened to me within the first 6 months of working at the firm. So, of course, you're a minority and you're an island minority. So people don't see you the same way. Let's be honest. It is what it is. Then the general African-American population. They see you differently. But my first 6-month appraisal at the accounting firm, I got a raise simply because of how I dressed at work. I'm sorry. Yes. I got a raise simply because of how I dressed and presented myself at work, and I showed up every day to the office and to our clients. So something that in this environment here is taken for granted, it's just seen as, well, you're supposed to. Why would you want a reward for what you're supposed to do? We've all heard that. Listen, when the partner told me this and showed me the evaluation, I was freaking out. I had to call my mom immediately. I was like, Mommy, all of the things that you was telling me about work and how I should go to work and how I should present myself, they rewarded me for it. She's like, what? They did what? Yeah, because she's like, why? Thank you very much. That's what you're supposed to do. Listen, and I wasn't even dressing to the nines or the way that I would dress in certain environments now. Right, because there's an element of you that still does not, when you're in a foreign environment, you don't want to attract too much attention to yourself also. Correct. So you're modest, but you're professional. Out, right. But at the same time, I don't want to stand out too much. Right. And that's how I was. So when they told me this, I said, okay, look at the Bahamian coming through. Okay, make sure what my shirts look like are very ironed, very polished. I'm going to make sure my hair looks right. And they appreciated it. Our clients appreciated it. And that was the most interesting work experience that I had coming from the islands and going into an American workforce. The difference in just how people presented themselves, even in an accounting firm. And, this is one of the things that often when I have conversations or I dialogue with African Americans, they don't particularly like about persons from the Caribbean and from,
they said we do a
from
lot.
Africa. Yeah, they feel as if, our presentation somehow is beyond what it should be. They feel that it's code switching, pandering, all of these things. Meanwhile, we are literally socialized from childhood under, a different type of system that you present yourself in a particular way.
Yeah.
And they receive that, I guess, very well.
And the thing is, like, I'm sure a lot of people are taught in terms of Bahamians and from the Caribbean diaspora is that people's first impression of you is very much a lasting one. So if I set the tone that I'm coming into this environment in a very professional manner, you're going to take me seriously than someone who is coming in with the clothing that they did not take out of the dryer and iron. You're going to take me more seriously than the person that has very dusty shoes who look literally like they just came out of bed and came into the office. And so that was always what I went into the workplace with. Let me make a good first impression, and then we'll go from there. Because then they'll hear me talk. Then they'll see my work. Then they'll all of these other things that would make my transition a little easier.
Yeah, there's often, and I hear people say this so many times, a book being judged by its cover. But they're like, we're visual people. Humans are we are shallow as people. And when I say that, I don't mean that in any sort of negative way. Yeah. But I don't have time to look at every single person on the street and think, what was their life story and what was their childhood, and maybe underneath this they have a good heart. You are literally taking in people at face value,
at what they present,
and assigning at what they present. Mm-hmm. So how then is it that someone can get upset that I assess you based on what you've shown me? I did not, dress you in the morning, and how does that become that? But you created this. You curated.
You chose like the ladies
this presentation.
Come into the airport with the bonnets on. You may like those.
Okay. So there was a situation. I don't know if you've heard about it or you've seen it. Kelly Rowland was on the red carpet
at Cannes. Yeah.
At Cannes, and a particular security guard.
I saw it.
Was very rough with her. Also with another woman of color, right? And I saw all of the outrage on LinkedIn, and I made some commentary. And my commentary was this: no matter who you are, you're not exempt from portraying a brand.
Yeah.
What your brand is not just you. It is also what other members of your demographic, race, and likeness put out there. If we consume branding that is not accurate, and we promote it, we cannot get upset.
When that is the reaction and response that we receive.
That is the reaction and the response. 1 and 1 is 2.
Not these days. It's coming up 3, apparently.
I said this is what happens when collectively our branding goes off. Anyhow, not straying back from the point. I love that you got a raise for presentation. That's amazing. Yes. So let's talk a little bit more before we go to a break about the other aspects of assimilation, right? Obviously, you're foreign, even though you're not that far geographically, you're still foreign. There's still elements of the culture you don't understand, navigating it. Your social life. Let's talk a little bit about what was that like in terms of your acclimation, making new friends and, having your work friends. And what was that like? Was that seamless? Were you a loner for a point?
I was a loner for a point. Okay. And that's just because my personality is one that tends to observe before I engage.
Right.
Because I try to understand where people are coming from a lot of times, because I have a hard time, to be very honest, trusting people and running them in my circle, right?
Right.
So there was a period of time that I was a bit of a loner, but I was very fortunate in that I had joined a few organizations, namely Alpha Kappa Alpha Sorority Incorporated in Tampa as an undergrad. And my transition into the workforce, I was able to connect with women in the organization who were able to help me navigate the nuances between Caribbean culture and American culture.
Yeah, because there's a gulf.
And there is.
Oh, yeah.
And so we became close from a social perspective,
Right.
and from a community perspective, and that made my transition a little bit easier, and it opened me up a little bit more to being more trusting with people and just giving people an opportunity. In terms of the workplace, that was actually very easy for me to build relationships and friendships there, because there was a cohort of us that came in between auditing and taxation.
Okay.
In the firm, we were all young graduates, and we just had a vibe. Coming from USF and University of Tampa. And so that transition was actually very easy. And my high school was St. Andrews.
Right.
So I was always in environments where, for the most part, I was a minority. So I didn't feel out
Othered.
of place or othered.
Yes.
And so for myself, I was very comfortable, and other people felt comfortable around me because we're just humans on this planet living our lives.
Right.
So the workplace transition was also a bit easier for me because of that, and coming in with a group of persons that was around my same age, looking for the similar things
Right.
in life and in the workforce. And then my neighborhood that I was in, I was able to, they had a few different social events that would happen on a monthly basis.
Right.
And I just popped in, and being my quiet self, someone that was an extrovert decided that they wanted to talk to me.
They call it adopting.
Yeah, they adopted me.
They adopted you.
And our relationship built, and then they introduced me to other people in the community, and then we just kept it moving like that.
So on and so forth. I want to read this text because this has me cackling. So this text says, yes. I was on a flight. I was on a British Airways flight to London 3 weeks ago.
Oh, dear.
And a girl in her early 20s was wearing a bonnet on the flight.
Listen.
I had to make sure that I was on the right flight. LOL. I understand, Dexter.
Listen.
That is jarring, because what are we doing?
Thank you. Why are we coming out of the house in the bedroom? What are we doing?
Do you know, and if you've not experienced this, it pays to dress up. Now, you don't have to be obviously full coat suit, but if you're like business casual, very polished,
Yeah.
do you know, and upgrade it for free?
Or even if you have athletic wear and athleisure wear
Right.
on.
And you look very polished.
And you look polished.
Yes.
Just a little lip gloss.
That's it.
Maybe a little eyeliner.
And a sea of bonnets, they bump you up.
Listen.
That has happened more than once.
It's happened to me before
Oh,
too.
yeah.
Like,
It's your presentation.
I've even made business relationships just by looking the part. So, I mean, ladies, this is not what we're doing for the rest of 2024. For those
Right.
listening in.
We just cannot. Your brand matters and your representation matters. And so even though we consume content that may amuse us, I'm always very aware of the implications.
Yeah.
And then I always look at who is behind pushing these narratives as well. They don't look like us.
No.
We must be aware of these things. Like you just cannot
It's the
blissfully...
subtleties that are happening in the background.
And it shapes the perception. So it makes, the race look like they're on sale all the time.
Listen.
Working twice as hard to get half is like, and these things bother me. It's not that you live with it as a chip on your shoulder, but you should have this awareness.
Yes,
Right.
agreed.
And it's just something that's always present. So before we go to commercial break, I just want to read the text number again, 242-422-4796. I'm going to read your texts as they come in. Thank you so much. We have a couple more check-ins. We've got one from Washington State. This is the same texter, and they always say Washington. And I'm like, is it Washington State? Are you in Washington, D.C.? Texter, what are you doing in Washington State? How are you enjoying this? Are you okay? Are you a Bahamian?
Yes, the outdoor life in
You
Washington
are
State
very
is amazing.
It is, but they are so far.
They are. But it's
You
okay.
are. Yeah, that's amazing.
Yeah.
So, let us know, how are you?
Yeah.
That is amazing.
Are you
Washington
enjoying
State.
it?
I felt for sure that it was going to be Washington, D.C.
Really?
Yeah,
well, we have a lot of
Bahamians
in DC.
in
yeah.
D.C. So Washington State, I just did not anticipate.
Going around the globe and finding their tribe.
So,
Good at that.
friend of mine, he was traveling to the Seychelles, right? He says, and he hears a Bahamian accent in the airport.
Yes.
Very loud.
Distinctive.
So he said he turned around. He said he's in the one point on Earth he figures he will not see he said, and he turned around and he was like, how are you here? And, the other person obviously laughed, and they're like, well, buddy, what you doing?
Yeah.
What are we doing? So we are everywhere.
We are.
Humans, we are
and
everywhere.
I love this for us.
I do. I absolutely do.
Our passport is gold.
Yeah, it is. It is. You got to use it. You know, it's important to expand your horizons. And then certain things are smaller when you get back. It's not as much of a big deal.
Yep.
And then other things are magnified. Like, oh, this is
like,
a big problem. I can't do this. So before we go to a quick commercial break, transitioning back from Tampa to the Bahamas. What was that like for you? Was that a drop of dopamine? Was it an increase? What was that like?
It was a major drop because it was not something that I had planned.
Oh.
So life lifed.
Yeah.
And I had to make a transition.
Yes.
And it did take me, honestly, about almost 2 to 3 years to fully readjust to living back
That's a long time, Keandra.
It is. Well, it was compounded. Right? So compounded with the way things were in society, because things have changed. Even though I would visit and come home and spend time with my family.
It's different from being immersed.
It's different from being immersed. And then I was dealing with personal things as well.
And social dynamics change.
So all of that happened at the same time. And then sometimes it takes a while to find your footing when you're returning, because persons that you would have connected with and had friendships with, their lives moved on in ways that you may not have been keeping up connect with them. You're starting over also in that regard. So building those connections. And then you would have also changed as a person as well. So people reaching out to you have to learn the new you in the process of you returning home. So it took me a while. And then also just trying to figure out what I wanted my next steps to be.
Right.
Also, but I don't think we give ourselves enough grace when you are, or you find yourself in a position where you have to make that transition back to the Bahamas if you were not expecting to make it. I think sometimes we figure that, okay, I moved somewhere before, I was always here, I can make that switch happen very quickly. But I would say to anyone who is in the process of having to come back to the Bahamas because of some unexpected turn, or if it's planned, to give yourself grace to readjust. Sometimes it happens a little bit sooner than that you may have anticipated, but if it's taking longer, that's okay too. The Bahamas has a lot going on right now.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And I'm glad that you gave that unsolicited advice, because I was actually about to ask you that. Yeah. What advice would you have for a Bahamian that is making an unexpected transition back home? I'm seeing some of them now on my timeline. I'm seeing more of the other way around on, I'm out, I can't do this anymore, goodbye. Yeah. But I'm also seeing the reverse that, for different reasons, family reasons, different transition for whatever it is. And I do see the struggle in trying to reacclimate, to a place. There's a saying that no man ever steps in the same river twice. For it is not the same river, and he is not the same man.
Listen, facts. That's almost like facts.
And that is exactly what it is. So we're going to go to a quick commercial break. Please continue to send your texts. I'm going to read them on the other side of the break. The text line is 242-422-4796. That's 242-4796. You are listening to Beyond the Rock. I'm your host, Dazzy, and in studio today, I am actually talking to Keandra Gardner, and we're talking about, her transitions abroad, coming back again, and we're going to actually get to her second transition. You definitely going to want to stay tuned for this one. And this one is it's still North America, but it's a different country, Canada. So we're going to cover, both of those. And so you're going to want to stay tuned for that. So please stick and stay, and we'll be right back.
Alliance Group, SAG, where we empower small businesses to succeed, where we make the impossible possible, with our e-commerce is possible. No more brick and mortar, get digital. SAG is right here for you. US, Canada, Bahamas. You can build a website for your products, accepting credit cards or digital payments. We make it easy to process, it's seamless. Sebastian Alliance Group, SAG, where we empower small businesses to succeed.
You can find it all at Builders Mall. From cement, lumber, block, plumbing, and electrical, to paint, lights, vanities, and tiles. Not to mention all the tools you could possibly need to get the job done. Say if you're starting a major project, adding the finishing touches, or just doing some repair or rental work around the house. FYP, the Paint Center, and stop by or call 601-8453. Located 69 Wolf Road, Nassau. You can find it all at Builders Mall. Building, painting, and tiling, the Bahamas.
Boy, you know what going down tomorrow?
Nobody, what happening?
Joe bringing these knives to school. He could do Junior in. For what? Boy, he fooled with Joe girl.
Mother sick. And you know Junior don't back down for nothing. So that means you got a big fight tomorrow.
So whose side you on?
Side? I trying to stay in school, not Simpson Pen. We gotta tell somebody about this fight.
Tell somebody. I ain't no snitch. I mean cool, you know.
Boy, if you so cool, then you need to stay in school and stay out of the fight.
Yeah, but if I don't hang on Joe's side, him and these boys coming for me next.
Alright, so we definitely gotta tell somebody. We gotta prevent the fight.
What I say, I don't want nobody call me snitch.
We could just call Crime Stoppers. You could report what you know, and nobody gotta know it's you.
So how did boy?
All you gotta do is call them, or you text them through the Crack Crime Bahamas app, and nobody can know it's you.
Then the police come looking for me for more info, and when they finish with them, Joe them coming looking for me?
When you call Crime Stoppers, the call go directly to Miami, and they don't ask nothing about you. Then you can get the pen from them, and they can claim a reward later using that same pen.
Plus, everything's scrambled, so nobody can read what you saying.
Call 328-8477 from Nassau or 242-300-8477 from the Family Islands.
You try to rest, but roll with the best. For all your printing needs, there ain't no one better, no. For posters and banners, magazines and flyers. For window decals, greeting cards and newsletters. No job too big and there's no job too small. You name it, we can print it, just give us a call. Let Print Masters bring your masterpiece to life.
Located in the Nassau Guardian Building, telephone 302-2361.
Back. You are listening to Beyond the Rock. I am your host, Dazzy, and we are having quite the engaging conversation tonight. I've got a guest in studio, and in the first half, we were talking about her transition as a Bahamian abroad, living in the U.S., and what that was like, and her transition back. And in the second half, we're going to talk about her moving to another country, same continent, still North America, but different country, Canada, and what that was like. Because, you know, like I said, I feel like Kendra can just, you know, organize a life in a week and on the plane, you know, it's just so easy. Car, visa, everything done, right? So if you want to go ahead and text in and chime in the conversation, 242-422-4796, 242-422-4796. We've got a couple check-ins. I see I've got my London check-in popping up again. Thank you for listening. I know it is nothing o'clock in the night. I appreciate you. Are you an insomniac? This is what I need to know. Because you couldn't have stayed up for the show, right? So what's going on? Do you work a night shift? Like, what's happening, right? Because I have a couple friends up there, but I do not recognize this number. So this is someone completely different. But thanks for listening in. I really appreciate your check-ins. Hi, Ginger. Thanks for texting in. Appreciate your commentary. But yeah, let's get back to so the second transition, right? And what that was like, because even though the U.S. and Canada have their similarities, there's a lot of differences as well. Socially, you know, it's just so many. Let's talk a little bit about that. So you were in which province?
I was in Ontario,
Okay.
specifically London.
London.
So just west of Toronto.
Yes.
The transition to Canada actually was a little bit more challenging than my transition when I moved into the U.S.
Do tell.
One, I decided that I was going to make this all happen in the pandemic. So we were a few months in, and I decided I needed to
Change the scenery.
just have a change of scenery, do something a little bit different, take an opportunity to
What does it say? The chutzpah's on you.
Yeah.
Because that is very brave.
So the thing is
During that
about the
period.
pandemic, what happened for me was I had a crisis of life,
Right.
is what I would call it.
Right.
Because at that point, I had been in my career doing, of course, what I love, but I wasn't sure whether or not I wanted to stay in what I was doing and what I
Right.
love doing. So I took it gave me the time to work on my body physically. I started a health journey at that particular time, and then that was another catalyst
Amazing
to be
journey.
like, okay, is this really what I want?
Right.
And so that thought just kept happening. And then I said, well, let me take a moment while the world is at a standstill.
Mm-hmm.
And I went and got some additional education, which allowed me an opportunity to stay in Canada for several years after I was completed.
Right.
But that transition was a little bit harder in that I had already reestablish myself here
Yes,
in the Bahamas.
and to unplug once again.
To unplug once again.
Right.
I really had a life at this point when I made this decision. And when I say really
Right.
had a life,
Oh, yeah.
place to stay,
A
car,
lot going on.
business,
Everything. Yeah.
was happening. But I just made a decision. I'm also the kind of person, if I make a decision, I'm gonna stick with it.
Oh, yeah.
Whether
Standing on business.
it's standing on business,
Oh, yeah.
whether or not it's a positive or a negative outcome.
Oh, yeah.
This is what we're doing. Follow through. I decided to sell off some assets.
Yeah.
And so that I can have the freedom and the flexibility of the
Right.
kind of life that I would have wanted to have.
Yes.
Did that, made my move. I had some great people working with me on my visas.
Yeah.
And also had a good friend at the time who made sure that I was able to get my apartment situated.
Oh,
She
yeah.
I ordered everything.
Yes.
It got to the apartment by the time as I got into Canada. And you know what was the craziest thing before I finished this story?
Oh, yeah.
Is that the borders were opening and closing consistently
I do
between
remember
the
this.
Bahamas and
Yes.
pretty much everywhere in the world.
It just kept, right. I do the fluctuations.
One day it was open, one
yeah.
day it was not.
Yes.
So my transition
Right.
happened on a day when the borders were open.
Right. It's like, now go.
Exactly. Literally, it was just go.
Right.
And I ordered everything for the apartment. She got everything in there, made sure I was completely set up. So by the time as I arrived, my life was good to go.
Right.
I started
Turnkey.
school. Everything was turnkey.
Did you
for me,
have to
which is-
quarantine?
I did.
I remember.
I quarantined.
You did, right?
I quarantined for
Okay.
14 days.
14 days at that point.
14
I
days
remember
I
this.
quarantined, which was still amazing for
Yeah,
me because I had all my groceries.
Right.
I had TV. I had the internet.
Yeah, just relax, really.
I relaxed. And
Yeah.
for me, it gave me a time to really make a decision on what I wanted my Canadian path to be.
Right. Decompress.
Decompress. It was,
Right.
it was fine.
Yeah.
And I shouldn't say this, but in my building, they
Right.
did allow us to go on the floor. So I was
fine.
able to move around the floor.
Super spread event.
No one was coming out. But,
No.
you know,
it is what it is.
it was what it was.
Yeah.
So that made it easy. And then when I was done with my studies, I had professors who were impressed with my profession.
Right.
And the things that I had achieved at that point outside of Canada, and they made recommendations and they connected me with persons and businesses, and I was able to work with one of the organizations. It was a nonprofit, Goodwill Great Lakes, Ontario,
Right.
with them to develop their marketing and development for a brand new line of clothing that was based on reclaimed and recycled clothing. So it was called Worth.
Right.
And so we pretty much built up that entire division of Goodwill Great Lakes, Ontario for a while, and that did extremely well. Very proud of what we did there because it was a form of fashion that people were just really getting into.
Right.
And we were able to do something real different. And then I was able to do a lot of personal work and developing my business marketing and social media management and skills, and worked with a lot of clients independently. And I had a great time in Canada.
So I'm hearing a common thread, and this is something that I hear no matter who I talk to. Someone who is a Bahamian who is abroad. I tend to take for granted a lot of our skills, our work ethic, our, just our entire presentation and our worth of who we are in the Bahamas.
Yeah.
And that's just because, culturally and socially, there are certain things that will make you doubt this just because of the environment, no matter how, I hear these doubts from persons, at the very top of the totem pole, right? That will express these things. But when we go into a different environment and we are recognized and you're seen with fresh eyes, a lot of times that will translate into, opportunity and, applause and growth and progress.
Yeah, all of it. I experienced all of it
across the board, and no matter, I had someone who messaged me, and they work at Home Depot, and this is not to say that is not a prestigious job, but the person intentionally said, listen, I intentionally tried to go, less than what my skills actually could support because I didn't want the stress. In 1 year, this Bahamian who went, their aspiration was to just be a cashier because they were like, I don't want any stress. They sold off assets as well.
Yep.
They weren't a part of the U.S. They felt they would not see another Bahamian. And it was like, I just want a job that's brainless, mindless, clock in, clock out.
Enough to cover my bills, me have a good life.
That's it.
I'm good.
1 year later.
Tell me what they did.
Regional manager.
See? Same thing. Y'all can't help yourselves.
Excellence cannot hide.
Y'all cannot help yourselves when y'all go abroad.
So I asked him, I said, well, how did this start? So he said, I showed up, and then they were like, can you be the supervisor? Because you're always here. You clock in first. We just need you to supervise the other one. So he said he became the supervisor. Then he said after that, he would make sure the processes were a little beat. And so they were like, oh, you're doing innovation now. So they bumped him up again.
Same thing.
From that, he said, he started, being very friendly with clients that came in, customers, and sometimes they would increase their sales. So they put him in sales then, right? Because it's like, on your shift, there is an exponential bump in revenue. What are you doing? So they put him in sales.
Yep.
From sales, it just went, he just on and on and on.
Yeah. And the thing is, I think sometimes we don't recognize our own strengths in environments that we would have been in for so long.
And he came out of hospitality, so a lot of the things that they just natural. It was just natural because he's someone that was an executive in a hotel for a while, and was in charge of business development and growth. So things that he just took for granted, they were amazed with. And so we really can't help ourselves.
We can't as Bahamians. It's ingrained in us. And then we are also, in my opinion, the type of people, if we see something that isn't right, we can't sit long and just allow it to continue. We're gonna try and see how we can make some recommendation, some adjustment to correct it. It's just innate in us. We're slightly perfectionism.
You want to hear the best part?
What's the best part?
He said that what stood out to them was that he had so much manners.
See? Same thing.
And I was like,
good morning, good afternoon.
What are you talking about?
Morning,
and so he said, I was just going to say, he said, well, when I walk in, I'd be like, morning. Which is, right? This is what it is.
We do.
He said, and they said that indicated to them early on that he was leadership material. So he said, Odaz, the funny thing about that, and that's how I know, people know me a long time, right? They call me by my government name.
Yeah.
So he goes, Odaz, the funniest thing about that, he said, my grandmother used to slap us in the mouth if we dare enter a room.
Without greeting?
Without greeting. So he said something that as extraordinary, and they saw that as having leadership ability,
Manners.
always having a smile, leaving the stress, because in hospitality they train you. You know, you leave your stress at the door.
Yep.
You don't bring that into the client.
Put that
You
in
don't
the
bring
box,
that into
put
the
that on the
customer.
shelf.
Right.
Keep it moving.
And so just those things alone, just attitude, and it really shows you how much soft skills really translate and take you beyond how people may perceive your foreignness, your accent, your presentation. It transcends.
It definitely transcends. And even for persons who are still on the rock, and particularly ones who work in hospitality with the international brands that we have across the country.
Right.
You don't know what having a positive attitude can do for you in that career. You don't know what customer service skills that you portray to someone, even if you're just cleaning a space, the difference that it can make, because all of these brands have shortages around the world in employment and quality people. And if you become a star in this particular environment on this rock, that can lead to an opportunity for you beyond the rock, and then give you a chance to experience something that you may not have. I know someone who worked at a particular brand in the West in hospitality. They did such an amazing job at what they did at that particular hotel, and now they're living in Washington D.C.
Oh yeah, recruited
in a management role.
Yes.
That otherwise, being here on the rock, they may not have had.
Right.
All expenses paid, salary included.
Yes.
Life is lifing.
Yes.
So we take for granted sometimes when we talk about being beyond the rock, what that looks like and transitioning. We're not realizing that what we do on this rock can lead to opportunities. So anyone in hospitality listening, you just never know.
People get recruited all the time because the talent that gets scouted here is not just for sports.
It's not.
And these are the stories that don't make the paper, that don't make the news, that you'd only hear anecdotally.
Yep.
I used to have a neighbor who worked in hospitality, and they grabbed him up. He's gone.
I also know people in financial services that has happened to.
Absolutely.
And have moved around the globe, outside of North America, into Europe, into Asia. Like, I don't think we understand the opportunities that we have. The fact that we have so many offshore banks here.
Yes.
The fact that we have so many private equity firms here. Like, industries, we're not limited in what we do. Even when we think about oil refining, that does happen here. Not in the full extent, but movement. When we think about when we think about different opportunities in terms of career paths, we just think about the traditional ones.
Right.
But there are so many non-traditional paths that people can take to being beyond and living beyond the rock.
So there was when I worked in the car industry years ago, a gentleman came and he was looking for 2 particular vehicles. And they were to be used in the movie Marley and Me. And they needed these specific vehicles because these were not considered vehicles that were present in the U.S. So they had to fly to the Caribbean because, they have restrictions on imports.
Yeah.
And these were Japanese imports.
Yeah.
And they needed it for the movie. And so they came in, they purchased a vehicle, and then they sent it back. Because it could not stay, it just was used as a movie prop. And then we eventually sold it to someone local, and we were like, hey, this was in a movie, right? But the one thing that stuck with me about that whole transaction was the place where I was at the time was the 3rd place that he visited.
Oh, wow.
And he said he ended up making a decision to go with us because the staff where I was just so friendly.
See,
and so engaging and so personable. And I do remember when he walked in the lot, it was around the time when, it is what it is, when the staff were having breakfast. It was before opening hours because he came a bit early. So apparently he was on the island for a few days. He did, some other lots previously on the day before. So he came very, very early. And I do remember one of the staff members joking with him and asking him if he wanted some breakfast because obviously you're here at breakfast.
Yikes.
And he loved that.
Oh, wow. That made all the difference.
That made all the difference. And I remember him like trotting over to whatever the place was next door to go. I don't want to call the name.
Yeah, people will identify.
Right. But going over, grabbing some breakfast, sitting there in the office, having it, right, having best conversation, and then he told us what he was about and what he came to do.
Wow.
And so you never know who you're entertaining.
Correct.
You never know, because he just looked like a regular person.
Even in healthcare.
Yeah. You just never know. You never know. So opportunities often present themselves without you being aware of it. But I want to ask you this, because I know our time is winding down. Socially, what was the difference like? Obviously, it was during COVID, so it was very different. But
when it opened up, though.
When it opened up, how did you find that transition? Was it as seamless?
No.
If you were to do it again, do you think that you would maybe do a different area?
I would.
Where would you go?
I probably would go to the...
Really?
Yeah.
I thought you were going to say the 6.
No.
Why not?
The lifestyle that I live right now...
Right.
The West Coast would allow for more outdoor living.
It does, and it's beautiful.
And correct. And the temperatures, even though it gets cold, it's a little bit more moderate.
It is a bit milder.
So that transition would be a little bit easier for me. But what I found in Canada that was very different than in the U.S. is in the U.S., you know that you're a minority. You know that you're different. You know that you stick out like a sore thumb. In Canada, because it is such a melting pot, to me more so than in the U.S. when it comes to certain things. Certain demographics.
Density, I agree.
It's subtle. The denotation that you're different.
It's not as... Which do you prefer?
I prefer to know it in my face.
Yeah.
I prefer to know so I can see you versus the covert...
Right.
Stuff.
They're in denial, too. They think they're so ahead
above it.
Of the U.S. I'm like, no, you're worse, actually.
Yeah. Yep.
No hate, no shade to all of the Canadians listening, but it's pretty obvious for,
It is. And for someone, and I guess for me, that was the harder part because I've always been in international environments, one, and then two, having lived in the U.S. and experiencing what that was. So to experience Canada in that way, it was different for me. And approaching building relationships and certain environments differently.
Right.
But I wouldn't change that experience for the world because I have a different empathy for people because of that. And I think I'm more gentle in my approach to people because of that experience.
That's a very interesting take. I don't know if that would be mitigated by the West Side because that's even more... that's even less densely.
Well, at that point, I'm not worried about that. For me, it's about lifestyle,
right?
In terms of being on the West Coast, more so than anything.
Okay. Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. This is a very interesting conversation. I almost wish we had more time because there's so much other things I'd like to get into. So let me ask you this, and I know this is you don't have to answer obviously, but I have to ask: can we look forward to any more transitions in the future? Do you see that ever happening? I have to ask, because someone texted in and said, "Please ask your guest where she's off to next," because. They have it in their mind that you're obviously some jet setter, and they want to know, if so, which country, because they feel as if you've conquered 2 continents. I guess they figure you want to Europe, eh?
That's a very
or South America
question.
Do we have time for that?
Yeah, we have 2 seconds.
Yeah, we do.
I will say that I am open to wherever opportunity leads.
Ooh, that's a good answer.
That's really how I feel about it.
Yeah,
so,
I like that.
I'm in business, and wherever that opportunity leads for business and growth, I'm there. and
I love
also
that.
life.
I love that. I'm definitely looking forward to this weekend as well. If you've been following the news and watching what's going on with the FNM, I don't know if you found it entertaining. I sure did.
I sure am.
Oh yeah, and every show I hear a little snippet because I don't follow it too closely. There's some other juicy tidbits. So I'm very much looking forward to see what's going on because I view politics as a spectator sport.
Likewise.
I'm looking forward to this weekend. But thank you all. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you to all of the texters and supporters and listeners to the show. Thank you so much for sending in your stories. You know, I do relay some of them anecdotally when I can, unless you explicitly want me to read it out. And yeah, if you want to come onto the show and talk about your experience and what that has been like, hit me up. Let me know. You can reach me very easily on LinkedIn as Odaz Gibbs, or on Facebook you can message the page Beyond the Rock, or you can message my profile directly, Odaz Gibbs, and yeah, let's have a conversation. So thank you so much, Keandra.
Thanks for having me.
Yeah, appreciate it. And this was a very impromptu invite, people, so thank you for showing up.
My pleasure.
I was like, you know what, you're global traveler. Let's go.
Let's do it.
And we didn't even talk about your traveling. Oh. This is just the relocation. So that's another show. But thank you so much, everyone, for tuning in. This is Beyond the Rock. I am your host, Dazzy, and we will have more conversations next week, same time.
This is Guardian Radio 96.9 FM.